WW2 Weapons, Myths, and Scary Truths. World War II created an age of weapons that still live in our collective fear. Machines of steel, fire, and impossible power. But for every real weapon that reshaped the battlefield, there were myths whispered in trenches, rumors passed between frightened soldiers, and stories that grew darker with every retelling. Some were exaggerated. Others were far more terrifying than anyone dared to believe. One of the most persistent myths was the idea of perfectly silent snipers, ghost-like shooters who could fire without sound, flash, or trace. Soldiers swore entire units were picked off by invisible hands. The truth was more unnerving. While the weapons themselves were never silent, some nations experimented with early suppressors and subsonic ammunition that drastically muted the crack of a shot. In dense forests or ruined cities, the echo vanished, leaving only the sudden collapse of a man who never heard the bullet coming. Another legend described tanks so unstoppable that bullets bounced off their armor like pebbles on stone. Many troops believed these steel monsters were invincible. In reality, early heavy tanks were terrifying, but also deeply flawed. Slow, mechanical nightmares that overheated, jammed, or even caught fire from the inside. Crews often faced a gruesome choice: stay and burn or flee into enemy fire. And yet, hearing those engines rumble in the distance sent waves of panic across entire fronts. Halfway through the war, soldiers on both sides began sharing chilling stories of experimental superweapons. Guns that could melt armor, rockets that could tear entire battalions apart, and devices rumored to harness strange new energies. If myths like these pull you in and you want more truths that blur the line between terror and history, make sure to hit that like and subscribe for more from Yahweh Stories 404. Because behind these stories were real experiments that pushed the limits of technology and morality. One such truth was the rise of portable anti-tank weapons. Troops once believed infantry were helpless against armored vehicles. But new designs gave a single soldier the ability to destroy a metal giant with one well-placed shot. These weapons didn't just change tactics, they changed psychology. Suddenly, fear shifted. Tank crews who once felt untouchable now lived with the anxiety of unseen attackers lurking in rubble, basements, and alley shadows. There were myths, too, about guns that never jammed. Frontline troops passed around stories of perfectly reliable rifles that could fire endlessly no matter the mud, snow, or sand choking the battlefield. But the reality was harsher. Every weapon jammed. Some jammed so frequently that soldiers carved charms into the stocks, hoping superstition would protect them more than engineering could. The cold made metal brittle. Heat warped barrels. Mud turned finely tuned parts into dead weight. The greatest killer on the battlefield was often not the enemy. It was the environment. Then there were the night-fighting legends. Tales of soldiers who could see in total darkness, spotting enemies long before they were seen themselves. While often dismissed as wartime fantasy, the truth was that late-war technology introduced the earliest versions of night vision scopes, bulky and unreliable, but terrifyingly effective in the hands of the few who knew how to use them. For soldiers caught in the beam of this new ability, it felt like being hunted by something not entirely human. There were also mutterings about weapons that drove men mad. Strange acoustic devices, blinding lights, and prototypes that played with the senses. Most were myths, but buried among the rumors were kernels of truth. Experiments were conducted with sound-based psychological weapons, designed to disorient and overwhelm. They were crude, unstable, and unpredictable. But to the men who encountered early versions of them, the effect was unforgettable. Nightmares followed them long after the war ended. And of course, there were the whispered stories of catastrophic last-resort weapons hidden away in underground factories, built with desperation and fear. Many of these were exaggerations, but some were chillingly real. Engineers were willing to try almost anything if it meant buying one more day, one more mile, one more illusion of hope. The line between science and desperation blurred in those final months. What makes these myths so haunting isn't that they were unbelievable. It's that so many were rooted in reality. Behind every rumor was a battlefield truth sharpened by fear, reshaped by trauma, and carried forward by men who saw things they could never fully explain. And if this descent into the shadows of wartime weaponry pulled you in, and you want more stories where myth mixes with terrifying reality, make sure to hit that like and subscribe for more from Yahweh Stories 4:4. Because history is always teaching us,